The small law office sat on a dusty street in Johannesburg's township. A hand-painted sign hung above the door. Mandela and Tambo, attorneys at law. It was 1952, the first black law firm in the city. Nelson Mandela, now 34, sat at his desk reviewing papers. The office was modest. 2 desks, wooden chairs, shelves lined with law books. But it was theirs. A place where black people could come for legal help without being turned away, without being treated as less than human. There was a knock at the door, hesitant, almost apologetic. "Come in," Nelson called. The door opened slowly. A family entered, a mother, a father, 3 children. The parents' clothes were worn but clean. The children's eyes were wide with hunger and fear. "Mr. Mandela," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, please, sit." Nelson gestured to the chairs. They sat, the children pressed close to their mother. The father twisted his cap in his hands. We heard you help people like us," the man said. "I help anyone who needs justice," Nelson replied. "Tell me what happened." The story came out slowly, painfully. The family had been evicted from their home, not because they hadn't paid rent, they had, but because the government had declared their neighborhood a whites-only area. They were given 48 hours to leave. No compensation, no alternative housing, just out. "We have nowhere to go," the mother said, her voice breaking. "My children, they're sleeping in a church basement. We can't live like this." Nelson listened, his jaw tightening. This was the law, the cursed, cruel law, the Natives Resettlement Act. He had read it, studied it, argued against it, but reading it in a book was different from seeing its victims sitting across from him. "Can you help us?" the father asked. "We have no money, but I can work. I can clean your office, anything." "Stop," Nelson said gently. "You don't need to pay me. Let me look into this. Give me your eviction papers." The man handed over a crumpled document. Nelson read it, his anger building with every word. Legal, all perfectly legal, but utterly unjust. "I'll take your case," he said. The mother's eyes filled with tears. "But they said no lawyer would help us. They said it's the law. There's nothing that can be done." "The law can be challenged," Nelson said. "It should be challenged. What they're doing to you, to thousands of families, is wrong, and I will fight it." "But can you win?" the father asked. Nelson paused. Honesty was important. "I don't know," he admitted. "The odds are against us. The courts, the judges, they uphold these laws. But we have to try. Because if we don't, if we accept this injustice without fighting, then we're complicit in our own oppression." The family left with a small seed of hope. Nelson sat at his desk staring at the eviction notice. His partner, Oliver Tambo, entered. "You took it," Oliver said. It wasn't a question. "I did. You know we can't win this." "I know. It'll take time, resources. We have other cases, paying cases." "I know," Nelson repeated. "But this is why we opened this office, Oliver. Not to get rich, not to be comfortable, but to fight for people who have no one else to fight for them." Oliver sighed. "Then we fight." Nelson spent 3 days researching. He read every law, every precedent, every loophole. He stayed up late into the night, his desk piled with books, his eyes burning from the dim lamplight. The case was simple. The government had designated an area as whites only. Families like his clients had been given notice to leave. The legal basis was the Natives Resettlement Act of 1954. clear, straightforward, seemingly unassailable. But Nelson found something, a small clause, a technicality. The act required reasonable alternative housing to be provided. His clients had been given none. It was thin, very thin, but it was something. He filed the case. Immediately, there was pushback. The white lawyers at the courthouse looked at him with disdain. "Mandela," one said, "you're wasting everyone's time. This case has no merit." "It has every merit," Nelson replied. "The law was not followed properly." "The law?" The lawyer laughed. "You want to lecture me about law? You should be grateful you're even allowed to practice." Nelson's jaw clenched, but his voice remained calm. "I'm not here to be grateful. I'm here to represent my clients, and I will do so zealously." Word spread. Other lawyers warned him, "Drop this case. You're making enemies. You'll lose your license. You'll never practice law again." Even some members of the black community urged caution. An elder from the township visited Nelson's office. "Mr. Mandela," he said, "we appreciate what you're trying to do, but this fight, it's too big. You'll be crushed. And then who will help us? Better to save yourself for battles you can win." Nelson listened respectfully. Then he said, "If we only fight battles we can win, we'll never fight the battles that matter. This family and thousands like them are being destroyed by an unjust law. I can't stand by and do nothing. Even if I lose, even if I'm crushed, at least I will have stood up. At least I will have said, 'This is wrong,' and I will not be silent." The elder shook his head sadly. "You're a brave man, or a foolish one. I'm not sure which." "Perhaps both," Nelson admitted with a slight smile. The hearing was set. Nelson arrived at the courthouse carrying his briefcase, his suit pressed, his head held high. He walked through a gauntlet of stairs, white lawyers who sneered, court officials who looked at him with contempt, even some black workers who whispered behind his back, "He's going to get himself killed." The courtroom was intimidating. High ceilings, dark wood paneling. A white judge in robes sat elevated, looking down at everyone below. The prosecutor was a seasoned government lawyer. He barely glanced at Nelson before addressing the judge. "Your Honor, this case is a waste of the court's time. The law is clear. The Natives Resettlement Act gives the government full authority to designate residential areas. The petitioners were lawfully evicted. There is no case here." The judge nodded. "Mr. Mandela, do you have anything to add?" Nelson stood. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "Your Honor, I do. The law requires that displaced families be provided with reasonable alternative housing. My clients received no such provision. The eviction, therefore, was unlawful." The prosecutor scoffed. "A technicality, hardly grounds to overturn." "It is not a technicality," Nelson interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "It is the law, the very law the government claims to uphold. If the government can pick and choose which parts of its own laws to follow, then we have no rule of law. We have tyranny." The courtroom went silent. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Mandela, you will watch your tone in this courtroom." "I apologize, Your Honor, but I cannot apologize for the substance of my argument. These are facts. My clients followed the law. The government did not. Justice demands that the eviction be overturned and proper housing provided." The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, this is absurd. The petitioners are trying to use legal tricks to avoid compliance with a lawful order. The court should uphold justice, Nelson said firmly, regardless of who stands before it. My clients are human beings. They have rights, and those rights have been violated. The judge looked at Nelson for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or annoyance. It was hard to tell. I will take this under advisement, the judge said. Decision in 3 days. Nelson left the courthouse. Outside, his clients waited, faces full of hope and fear. How did it go? The mother asked. We made our case, Nelson said. Now we wait. The 3 days felt like an eternity. Nelson continued working on other cases, but his mind kept returning to the family. He barely slept. He barely ate. Oliver watched him with concern. You're killing yourself over this. I'm fighting for them, Nelson corrected. But you can't save everyone, Oliver said gently. You can't win every case. I know, Nelson said, but I have to try. Because if I don't, who will? These people have no voice, no power, no money. I'm all they have, and I will not let them down. On the 3rd day, the decision came. Nelson received a call. His hand trembled as he picked up the phone. The judge had ruled against them. The eviction stood. The law was clear, the judge said. The government had followed proper procedure. Case dismissed. Nelson sat in silence for a long time. Oliver entered the office. One look at Nelson's face told him everything. We lost, Oliver said quietly. We lost, Nelson confirmed. They sat in silence. The weight of it pressed down. Another family destroyed, another injustice affirmed. What do we tell them? Oliver asked. Nelson stood. We tell them the truth. We fought. We did everything we could. And we lost. But we didn't give up without a fight. And that matters. He went to the church where the family was staying. When they saw his face, they knew. The mother began to cry. The father put his arm around her. The children didn't understand, but they felt the sadness in the room. I'm sorry, Nelson said, his voice thick with emotion. I tried. I did everything I could. But the judge, the law, it's not your fault, the father said. You fought for us. No one else would. You stood up. That means something. Does it? Nelson asked, more to himself than to them. If I can't help you, if the law crushes you anyway, what's the point? The father looked at him steadily. The point is that you tried. You saw us as human. You treated us with dignity. In this world, that's rare. That's precious. Don't lose that, Mr. Mandela. Don't let this defeat make you bitter. Nelson nodded, but inside he was hollow. Word of the loss spread. Some said, see, fighting is useless. Others said, Mandela is naive. He doesn't understand how the world works. Nelson received a visit from a senior black businessman. Mr. Mandela, I respect what you tried to do, but you need to be practical. You have a law practice to run. You have bills to pay. You can't take every hopeless case. You'll destroy yourself. Perhaps, Nelson said, but what's the alternative? Ignore injustice? Take only cases I can win? Become comfortable while my people suffer? You can help more people if you stay in business, the man argued. If you go bankrupt fighting losing battles, you help no one. I help myself, Nelson said quietly. I help my conscience. I help my soul. Because if I stop fighting for people like that family, I become what they want me to be, complicit, comfortable, silent. The man shook his head. "You're idealistic. The world will break you." "Then let it break me," Nelson said, "but I will not break myself." That night, Nelson sat in his office alone. He looked at the law books on his shelves, all those words, all those principles, justice, equality, rights, beautiful words, but empty when the system was designed to deny them. He thought about quitting, about becoming a different kind of lawyer, one who took safe cases, profitable cases, one who didn't challenge the system. But then he thought of the family, of the mother's tears, of the children sleeping in a church basement, of the father who thanked him even in defeat. And he knew he couldn't quit. He couldn't become comfortable, because the cost of justice wasn't just his time or money or reputation. The cost was staying human in a system designed to dehumanize. And that was a cost he was willing to pay. Years later, long after that case, Nelson Mandela would reflect on that moment. He never saw that family again. He didn't know what happened to them, whether they found housing, whether they survived. But he learned something crucial from that loss. "I didn't win that case," he told a young lawyer years later. "In fact, I lost most cases in those early years. The system was rigged against us. The laws were unjust. The judges were biased. We almost never won." "So why did you keep fighting?" the young lawyer asked. "Because winning wasn't the point," Mandela said. "Don't misunderstand. I wanted to win. I fought to win. But the real victory wasn't in the verdict. It was in the fight itself." "I don't understand," the young lawyer said. Mandela smiled. "Every time I took a case for someone with no money, no power, no voice, I was saying something. I was saying, you matter. Your suffering is not acceptable. This injustice will not go unchallenged." And that message, that simple act of standing up, that changed things. Not the laws, not immediately, but it changed people. It changed me. It showed others that resistance was possible, that you could look the system in the eye and say, "This is wrong, and I will fight it." "But you lost," the young lawyer said. "I lost in court," Mandela corrected, "but I won something more important. I kept my humanity. I refused to become complicit, and I planted seeds, seeds that would grow into a movement, seeds that would eventually tear down the very system that defeated me in that courtroom." He paused, remembering. "That family taught me something. They taught me that justice isn't about winning. It's about fighting. It's about refusing to accept injustice. It's about standing up even when you know you'll lose. Because those moments, those defeats, they matter. They accumulate. They inspire others. And one day, all those losses become a victory. Not for me. Not in my lifetime, perhaps, but for the future. For the children who will grow up in a world where no family is thrown out of their home simply because of the color of their skin." The young lawyer sat quietly, absorbing this. "So what's your advice?" he finally asked. "Take the hopeless cases," Mandela said. "Fight the losing battles. Stand up for people no one else will stand up for. Not because you'll win, but because it's right. Because every act of resistance, every challenge to injustice, every moment you refuse to accept the unacceptable, that changes the world. Slowly, invisibly, but surely. And if I lose, you will lose," Mandela said with certainty, "many times. But each loss is also a lesson, a testament, a seed planted, and one day someone will water that seed, and it will grow. And the world you fought for, the world you lost case after case trying to create, that world will come. Not because you won, but because you refused to stop fighting. And in courtrooms across the country, in small offices, in church basements, and township streets, lawyers and activists were taking the hopeless cases, fighting the losing battles, standing up when everyone said sit down. They were losing, but they were also winning. Because they were staying human, they were refusing to accept injustice, they were planting seeds, and one day, not today, not tomorrow, but one day, those seeds would bloom into forests of freedom. It started with one lawyer, one family, one impossible case. It started with the decision to fight, even knowing defeat was certain, because that's where justice lives, not in victories, but in the refusal to surrender.